Back in the 1970s, buying a Lancia was no more extraordinary than enjoying a nice cup of tea. In Britain alone, 40,000 people did it every year. But by 1993, the number of people buying a Lancia in Britain was roughly equal to the number of people who like gravy on their cheese salad. Last year, they sold just 600 cars over here, and now they've given up. They've pulled out of the British market. And for me, that's sad, because I can remember the days when Lancia made cars like this. This is the Fulvia, a two-door, 1.6-litre coupe, which epitomised all that was good about Italian cars in the 60s. For a kick-off, it was sophisticated, with high-tech suspension, an unusual V4 engine, and disc brakes all round. It wasn't especially fast in a straight line, but through the bends, it could show a clean pair of heels to almost anything. Inside, it's simple and straightforward and delightful, even though this dashboard does remind me just a little bit of an old Garrard SP25 turntable. I suppose the modern-day equivalent of the Fulvia is the Honda CRX. Certainly, Lancia doesn't make a car like this anymore. They've gone all mainstream. They've forgotten what they were good at. There are those who say that this was one of the last of the great Lancias. That's not to say the Monte Carlo wasn't great in places. It was. Launched in the late 70s, the Monte Carlo was a sort of scaled-down Ferrari. It was even designed by the same people. It's a pretty two-door, two-seater, two-litre mid-engine coupe, virtually unique in its time and virtually unique today as well. But even so, you can buy a good one for about £4,000. You can buy a bad one for about 4p. All great so far then, and pretty good when you get inside. You get this wonderful woolen upholstery, and the instrument binnacle shows just what the Italians can do when they're let off the lead for a while. It was a lovely car to drive too, nimble, fast and flowing. But it was not so lovely when you wanted to stop. The front wheels locked up far too easily, so Lancia took the Monte Carlo out of production and spent 2 years fixing it. But all they did was take the brake servo off. Later Monte Carlos didn't stop at all. But this piece of news was overshadowed by a much, much bigger one. This is the car in question, the Beta. It was the biggest seller in the Lancia range, which makes you wonder why they made it out of steel so thin you could read through it. It would have been tougher if they'd made it out of veal. Most Betas were bought back by the company and crushed, but a few slipped through the net. Now you should avoid them very vigorously, because when you want to get rid, it's pretty difficult. Excuse me. How much did you give me for my car?
What is it?
It's a Lancia.
What sort?
Beta.
Ah. Well, of course, I'd have to test it.
What do you mean, test it?
Oh dear.
It seems then that there is absolutely no market for used paint. Unless, of course, it's metallic. The Beta ruined Lancia's reputation. People forgot about cars like the Stratos here. Not only one of the best-looking cars ever made, but with that 2.4-litre Ferrari engine, it makes the best noise you've ever heard too. like 65 yards of ripping calico. People forgot about Lancia's rallying successes too. They won the World Championship in 1972, 74, 75, 76, 83, 87, 88, 89, 90, 91 and 92. But you ask rally spectators to name the most successful rally team of recent years, and no one knows.
Ford, definitely. Vauxhall?
Ford.
Toyota seems to be doing pretty well.
Ford.
Vauxhall.
It's pathetic, and it's down mainly to useless advertising like this. They never told us about their rally wins, and they can't spell either. And the bad advertising was just the tip of a hopeless marketing iceberg. When they launched this car, the Dedra, to the British press back in the late 80s, the music they chose to accompany the dry ice ballyhoo was from the Hovis bread commercial. And this was from a company which once told us they build their cars just fine. It's other manufacturers that use, and I quote, excessive build quality. In fact, the Dedra is better protected from the elements than the reactor in Sellafield. But they were so busy warding off rust, they forgot about everything else. They let school children do the electrics, so they're forever going wrong. But more than that, they forgot about style. I thought rumps this size were the preserve of middle-aged Americans. To drive, the Dedra's fine, but that shouldn't really be a surprise because underneath the skin, it's basically a Fiat Tempra. In fact, the only differences are that the Dedra is uglier and more expensive. Small wonder that Lancia had such a terrible time trying to sell it in the UK. In fact, the only people who bought it are at home right now tucking into a delicious Jaffa cake and sausage salad, complete with lashings of mayonnaise and jam and gravy. Frankly, I'm glad to see the back of the Dedra, and the Thema, and the Y10. So, why am I sad to see Lancia leave the UK? That's why. The Integrale, the only decent car that Lancia make these days. A four-wheel drive, turbocharged, 16-valve thug. Now, I always look forward to a drive in an Integrale, but not this time, because this time I'm driving it into the history books.